These past few days, these high holy days, these days of awe, I found myself looking at services around the world, looking at the communities in Israel where I used to pray when I lived there, seeing the beauty, and yes, at times, seeing the sadness. And watching those services in Israel reminded me of my time in Jerusalem. Walking down those cobblestone streets, my favorite moments were when strangers would pop their heads out of random doors, asking me to join a minyan. As many of us know, Jewish law demands a minyan, or a quorum of 10, to have a proper and full service. Most importantly, it demands a minyan of 10 to say words of Kaddish for one who has died. Now, never mind the fact that I was only being asked to join because of my perceived gender. That's another sermon. But it was those moments that forced me to stop, that caused me to pause, that allowed me to put my Jewish learning and ethics into practice. Because I knew that in those moments, that the need for a stranger to offer prayers was predicated on me, a stranger, passing by on pure chance and coincidence to offer my most sacred gift, time. For the majority of us this past year, while we have been experiencing this quarantine, we as a global community have thought a lot about time. The time we give and the time we take, the time wasted and the time wanted. We learn from Psalm 144, the life of a person is like a breath exhaling. Our days are like a passing shadow. If the psalmist is right, then how are we counting our days? And more importantly, how are we making our days count? Yom Kippur. Today is referred to as Shabbat Shabbatot, the Sabbath of all Sabbaths. And it was the great Abraham Joshua Heschel who taught in his book, The Sabbath, that Judaism is a religion of time, aiming at the sanctification of time. Unlike the space-minded individual to whom time is unvaried, to whom all hours are alike, from a Jewish and biblical mindset, there are no 2 hours that are alike, no 2 minutes that are alike. Every hour is unique, the only one given at that moment, exclusive and endlessly precious. For Heschel, the Jewish way of thinking, the Jewish way of living, is to look at time as holy. For Heschel, that was the beauty of Shabbat, that we finally get to free ourselves from the 6 days of mundane living and enter into a palace of time, when time truly begins to recognize that it's a gift from God. But it is our challenge not to wait all week for Shabbat. It is our challenge to create those moments of holiness every day. It is our challenge to create pockets of Shabbat every day. It's our challenge to create those pockets of holiness in our lives. My teacher, Rabbi Richard Levy, who I mentioned earlier of blessed memory, he would live these words every day. As I said in his eulogy a year and a half ago, for Rabbi Levy, the calendar, it was a mere suggestion. For Rabbi Levy, the meetings were not measured from narrow time slots that the calendar would give. He, to his last dying day, would only use a written calendar. But rather, the meetings were about the individual he was meeting with, the content of the conversation, the genuine interest of the moment. Often when meeting with Rabbi Levy, you would wait a while because he was just finishing up with the person before you. But we were never annoyed because time stood still. We had the chance to breathe and just be. Because in that waiting, we were reminded of the gift of time, that time is holy. And far too often we are racing and not receiving. So today, we take the words of the Psalms, the teachings of Heschel, and the life of Levi, and we reflect on our own time, how we live, and how we allow others to live in our space. Life is made up of minutes. For some, we waste those minutes as we push along from task to task, meeting to meeting, person to person, scrolling one app to the next. But for others, for the truly righteous and special among us, those minutes, those meetings, those people, well, that's the essence of life. That is what it means to live. How we value our time and how we praise each minute and how we value those souls in our lives that occupy those minutes. So on this day, this Shabbatot, this Yom Kippur, we ask ourselves and each other, how will we live those minutes? How will we make our time sacred and holy in this new year? Because often we must admit, because today is about truth, about honesty, about a heart-filled confession. Often we find ourselves saying, just a minute, be there in a minute, call you back in a minute, give me just a minute. These words are easy to offer and they roll off our lips like water into a stream, not realizing for once that each minute is sacred and each minute is a gift, a bridge from the safety of the past to the beautiful unknown of the future. The minutes we offer, the minutes we take away, the minutes we share, these are sacred vessels of encounter, of connection, of hope. Each minute a jar of something unique, a jar never used before and never used again. Entering this new year with new ideas and new possibilities, how will we use our minutes? Hold them tight. Hold tight the ones who make our minutes worthwhile. Our spaces might not change in this coming year, but the use of our time and our minutes, that is what will count. How often do we go from just a minute to making our minutes just? The opportunities for profound acts of justice and hope in a world void of both, these are what we can use our minutes for. The minutes we will take to vote. The minutes we will use to call truth to power and offer a voice to the voiceless. The minutes we will use to end the week and offer a pure Shabbat Shalom. The minutes we will use for an extra hug before we leave. The minutes we will use when we are asked, can you just read one more page? We have the minutes until they are gone. So let's commit in this new year to use them with intentionality, with possibility, and with compassion and love. So right now, take a minute. Breathe in the power of today, the possibility of tomorrow, and the holiness of now. How will we use our minutes for good? How will we use our minutes for right? How will we share those minutes with the ones that we love? On the morning of the funeral of the Honorable John Lewis this past summer, one of his biographers, the great historian John Meacham, said that he believed John Lewis to be a saint in the pure essence of the idea of sainthood. Not otherworldly, not angelic with supernatural powers, a sinner, not a savior. But compared to the rest of us, he sinned a little less and saved a little more. What a great message and reminder for us on this Yom Kippur. And although we don't have the tradition of sainthood, we do have that of the tzaddik. And I have thought a lot about John Lewis this past summer. And this past week, so many of us have thought about the tzaddik, Justice Ginsburg. Two of them icons of justice, heroes to the masses. I think about their minutes, the time they spent pursuing good, the time they spent pursuing justice, but also the time they spent for us, taking time for pictures, moments for passerbys, to share their truth, to share their Torah, to share their minutes. We make their memories a blessing. We make their memories a revolution by committing our lives and our times to the pursuit of the holy, to the pursuit of the good, and to the pursuit of justice. Because their passing and the passing of so many in this past year reminds us that although their time is gone, our time remains. Because we are the guardians of this moment. We are the keepers of this time. So how will we use it for good? For the ones in our home that we love, for the ones in our community that we care for the ones in our society that we have never met, but are waiting for our voice and are waiting for our time in this coming year. How will we transform our time into vessels of good and right, vessels of justice and hope, vessels of love and compassion? Now we have to be honest with ourselves. In this coming year, we might not find ourselves walking the streets of Jerusalem. We might not be asked to join that minyan, but we will be asked to give a minute of our time. And the question we ask ourselves is, how will we respond? How will our minutes transform the lives around us? How will our minutes turn mundane moments into holy opportunities? We might not be the tzaddik, the righteous person yet, but with enough minutes in this coming year, we might find ourselves a year from now, together, once again, a community of tzaddikim, reflecting on a year of justice, reflecting on a year of hope, and reflecting on a year of love. Let's make our time count together in this coming year. Shana Tova.